How's it going, everyone? And welcome back to the All Stars Entertainment channel. Today, we are proud to announce our pilot episode for our new podcast, Full Speed Friday. So, this podcast is going to be covering the weekend events of racing, such as mainly NASCAR, what we're going to be covering, the 3 series, mainly the Cup Series, what we watch every Sunday. And then every now and then, might bring up some news in Formula 1, IndyCar, things like that. So, I'm Brian. I've been watching NASCAR for pretty much my whole life, so that's pretty much my whole life. Grew up a Big Dale Senior fan, then moved on to Harvick. Now I'm on Byron. So, that's where we're going. And today, as usual, I'm joined by Colin.
What's going on, everybody? I've been watching NASCAR for about a year religiously at this point in my life, courtesy of Brian. But growing up, I always watched it like kind of intermittently. Just kind of like tuning through channels. I'm like, oh, race is on. Cool. Love the vroom vrooms. That's about it. As far as favorite drivers go, I'm a big Kyle Busch fan. Really dig what Joey Logano does. And also really lately been digging what Carson Hocevar is doing. So looking forward to what his career is going to bring because he's only like 21 years old or something like that.
Yeah, he's young. I think he's got a really promising future, which we can talk more about at the end because he had a pretty decent result this past weekend.
He did.
Which this past weekend was the Cookout 400 at Richmond Raceway. Boy, did we have some shenanigans at the end.
Oh, some shenanigans indeed ensued, and I got to be honest with you, I'm all about it. That's like my favorite part of racing. Love the shenanigans.
Shenanigans are good. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to break down the race by stages, so stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3, with the exception of the Coca-Cola 600, which has 4 stages, but we're already past that, so we will worry about that next year.
And we'll also talk about post-race interviews, and at least in this particular instance, because they were really important to the end of the race.
Yes, and they actually showed them. I don't know if you've noticed, but we've not seen a lot of post-race interviews this year on NASCAR, on the actual channel. If you go to the NASCAR channel, you will find it, but...
Yeah, it's usually just like almost like post-game analysis, or post-racing is what I should say in this instance.
Pretty much, yeah. So yeah, that was interesting. So yeah, we'll talk more about the interviews because that is relevant to what happened because like we said, some shenanigans.
Right.
So let's just start it off in stage 1. Really not a lot happened in stage 1. Really just the best I can say is it was just Joe Gibbs' dominance in stage 1.
Yeah, pretty much, man. I mean, Joe Gibbs has like really been looking solid this year, and all things considered in the season.
Yeah, I mean, at least in this first stage.
Yeah,
I feel like Joe Gibbs has been really dominant in the first stage. I mean, we had Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin, and Truex all in the top 3, obviously. And, I mean, they were looking strong. I thought for sure one of those 3 cars was going to be, ended up winning a race. And, obviously what happened. But all 3 of them started off strong. And I think Ty Gibbs was in the top 15 as well. Maybe even top 10 at the end of that stage.
I'm pretty sure he was top 10 at the very end.
Yeah. So... Again, I feel like Joe Gibbs has been really consistent in top 10s scoring points this year. It's almost kind of reminiscent of Harvick, where I just felt like Harvick was always in the top 10. Truex has that same just kind of consistency. So that's what we saw in stage 1, really, was just consistent from JGR.
I also can't confirm Ty Gibbs was 17. I just looked it up again.
Okay. So well, anyway... It doesn't matter because, as we know, pit stops can really shake things up. And boy, at the end of stage 1, we got a preview of what the big news going into the weekend was, and that was the 2 choices of tires, the option tires and the prime tires. So the prime tires are obviously the harder compound that everybody kind of runs week in and week out. And then the option tires are a more softer compound. So basically what it is you have the added bonus of both grip and speed at the first half of a run that you'll get with the option tires as opposed to the prime tires, which will have more grip and speed at the end of a run because they're a harder compound, they last longer. So we got a preview of that when Daniel Suarez, 99 Trackhouse, and Michael McDowell of the 34 car both took the option tires. So McDowell was a lap down. He put on options. He was the first car on the tail end of the lead lap. But Suarez was outside of the top 15 coming into the beginning of stage 2. And did he come out firing at the end of stage 2, or the beginning of stage 2 rather.
Specifically, Daniel Suarez started 15 to start stage 2.
Yep. So he came in with really nothing to lose. I mean, he already has a race win from Sonoma. So, again, this is just that strategy of throw it against the wall and see if it sticks.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I feel like, honestly, he had nothing to really lose and nothing to gain from this. It was just kind of like, well, let's just see what happens. I mean, it could get me in the top 10. It could just put me in the top 20. Who knows? But I'm standing at 15. Might as well try it.
might as well. So,
I mean, worst comes worst, you can just pit again and just switch over in the stage.
Exactly. So what you have was amazing to me. Within 24 laps, Suarez went from outside the top 15 into the lead, just from the option tires. So 24 laps is kind of where I think people thought the fallout was going to happen. And I just think Suarez was able to take care of his tires. You could kind of see him kind of playing with the throttle a little bit going into turn 1, out of turn 2. So I think he really took care of those tires, and it was really interesting because after the first round of pit stops in stage 2, the 99 actually cycled behind Christopher Bell. So outside of the top 15, into the lead, and cycles through behind the leader before those rounds of pit stops. Very interesting. But also on those pit stops, we had a crucial error for your boy Kyle Busch. Big error in the pits.
Do we have to talk about it?
Got to talk about it. Got to talk about it because Kyle Busch, he's become very relevant because he's in a car RCR, and that'll be relevant towards the end of the race, as we know. But also Chris Buescher had a pit stop error in stage 2 that cost him. So that seemed to be another trend in the race, was pit stop errors. And again, that happened more towards the end of stage 2 and going into stage 3. We had really crucial errors that we'll talk about. But
before we go any further,
yeah.
I do have one more point about Daniel Suarez.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the throttle, how he really was kind of sort of playing with it. I noticed that it seemed like he was holding steady about anywhere from 100 to 115 miles per hour most of the time. So I wonder if you pushed it farther than that, if these tires would just kind of dissipate entirely.
I think we saw that with Kyle Busch, because I think he got them when he was a lap down in a later stage, and he just pushed so hard he got his lap back, but he just fell. The fall off was just incredible.
And that's what I was say, because I know Kyle Busch was running about 120, 125 just to gain momentum up in the field.
Yeah, he had to. He was a lap.
Right.
Again, it comes back to what you said with Suarez. Why not send it?
Right.
So that was interesting, and it's interesting because they actually talked to Chris Gabehart, which is Kyle Busch's crew chief, in stage 2, and he said that the fall off of the option tires was not as bad as they thought. Yeah. So that kind of thing goes into why he decided to maybe throw those tires on, try to get that lap back, and see how long they'll last when they push.
Right. But you can also see why they try this at a short track instead of Daytona or something like that. So it's just not going to work.
No, these tires I don't think would be beneficial at a super speedway. Personally, I think they're very well fit for a road course. Obviously, with Formula One, they have 3 compounds, usually soft, medium, and hard. So I think that would be interesting to see them throw them on in the road course. Probably next year we'll probably get that. Maybe at COTA, because COTA, they do run Formula One there, so we'll have similar tests with, again, it's Pirelli versus Goodyear, but we have similar tests.
They might work well at Chicago, but that's a whole nother topic for later.
Chicago is a street race. That would be something that they have to look at Indy for, which, again, at least there's other series with this. Yeah. But let's just get back right into stage 2, because towards the second round of pit stops, green flag, Truex had a big mistake on pit road. So there's kind of the beginning of the end of the JGR domination that we saw in stage 1, where we originally thought, oh, here we go, JGR is going to run away with it, and here we go, Truex is the first domino to fall. Right.
And I tell you, ever since Truex announced he's retiring at the end of this season, everything that could go wrong, I feel like, has gone wrong for Truex.
Yeah. Oh, and it gets worse. Yeah. It gets worse. But that really wraps up stage 2, and Suarez's strategy pays off because he wins stage 2. So he gets those crucial stage points, and that adds to his points total for adding on to that one win he had in Sonoma. So that's big, especially for Trackhouse. And I know they're really looking to get Chastain going too. So hopefully this little victory, if you will kind of jumpstart Trackhouse and play with those strategies a little bit. But yeah, so as we get into stage 3, we had everybody came out really, I think, on options, really, except for Suarez, in the top 15 at least. what's really important is because Bell starts on the option, and he beat Suarez out of the pit, so he has the lead. So he chose the inside. Suarez had the outside, and so this is where we really get to see the prime tires versus the option tires on a restart, fresh off of the stage, and Suarez dropped off pretty quick, so he went right out of the top 15 once again. So it really showed that the option tires were just crucial in moments like that. Right.
And it was only within about 2 laps that he was out of the top 15.
It was very quick, and he just got ran down, almost run over by Bubba Wallace on, I think, the second lap. Like, it was bad.
But then again, like we've been saying, it was an experiment. That's like everybody needed to try it on stage 3 just to see what happens, or just about everybody.
Yeah,
as it was.
I mean, I get why Suarez did not use the option, because he only had 1 set left. Right. And obviously people were like, we got to save for the end, and obviously they needed to, because there was an overtime that we'll talk about. But yeah, and then let's get back to Truex, because here it goes. Lap 249, he radios in, guys, I'm blowing up. And then sure enough, on lap 250, he brings it into the pits. They pop the hood up, engine smoking. Truex is out, blown engine. And this is the 5th Toyota engine that has blown up since June.
It's not a good look for a Toyota.
It's not. I mean, you got to think
they're not really going places, to be honest with you.
Well, they're going places. It's to the garage early. And, I mean, this is not a good look for TRD, especially because it seems like every week, as we talk about Stage 1, Joe Gibbs dominance. I feel like every week Joe Gibbs has a car either in the lead or the top 5 or the top 3 even, every single week. So that the Toyota engines have the speed. We see it with Joe Gibbs, and obviously we see it with 2311. Because they're the same engines, obviously. But we see those cars are fast consistently. Tyler Reddick, I feel like, is always running in the top 10, top 5. And even Bubba Wallace has been consistently in the top 10 every now, or pretty much every week, honestly.
But something's got to be said. Like, well, what is going on with Truex's engine then all of a sudden? What's happening? It's the same engine.
I feel like it's always Truex. Like, I don't know if they test him and be like, this engine sucks. This guy's leaving at the end of the year. And then this really goes into next year, though, when you think about it. What's going to happen when Chase Briscoe takes over the 19 car? Is it going to be the same thing?
I don't know.
Young guy, new guy? Who knows? Maybe they'll give it to Bell because he leaked the news and Joe Gibbs is a little upset. I don't know. But hopefully they figure it out, because you can't have 5 engines in 2 months explode when you're dominant.
Right.
Like dominant.
Right. Again, that's a lot of engines in 2 months.
That's a lot of money. I mean, just alone. And I'm sure Joe Gibbs has more money than God, but still, it's a bad look.
It doesn't make any sense to me, too, where it's just like, well, if all of these engines are blowing up, why are we not doing anything about it?
Right, and you don't see it in the Chevy camp, really. I can't think of a relevant engine blow up in Chevy. Probably Kyle Busch, but who knows? But no, I just feel like it's consistently bad for Toyota. This is just bad. Yeah. Like, you have a chance to win the championship, honestly, between Denny and I'd throw C. Bell in there. I think Christopher Bell's got a chance.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's just not a good look. Even Reddick, I think Reddick has a chance to win it. But if you're having engine problems, if you're blowing up every week, how are you going to win a race?
No, you can't.
So
obviously
that's going to hurt. And again, we talked about Chevy not really having problems, but here we go. Let's talk about another problem that the Fords are having. Austin Cindric loses power steering.
Yeah.
Now, at a short track, that's not as bad as, say, when Michael McDowell lost power steering at COTA. So this isn't really as consistent as the Toyota engines blowing up, but it's still an issue. I mean, I don't want to be driving 170 miles an hour and my power steering's out.
Yeah, it's kind of not great.
It's kind of not good. So,
kind of makes it feel like, yeah, well, But then again, I always feel like it always comes to like the worst opportunities for these drivers in the Fords.
And it's a shame, because McDowell, I believe, was having a decent week at COTA that race.
Yeah, wasn't he in the top 10 like pretty much from the start?
He was looking good, and Cindric was looking pretty good too. I think Cindric had a shot to be up towards the front near the end in terms of strategy. But you lose power steering. It is what it is.
It happens.
And then we go to his teammate Ryan Blaney, coming into the pits. Big problem with the gun on the right front. Definitely cost him the race. I mean, I don't know if he would have won the race, but it definitely cost him big.
Yeah, it cost him a shot at least like the top 3.
Oh yeah, And then we'll get back in. Remember Joe Gibbs' dominance? Here we go. Christopher Bell caught with a speeding penalty. Third time in a row at Richmond he's been caught speeding.
And he's had a real problem with that speeding penalty this season overall.
Yeah, I don't know if they're just calling it more or if their timing has gotten better, like their timing sensor. But I feel like speeding has really been just on the up this year because Bowman was caught on that as well.
Right.
At the same time.
Right. But I also just always feel like that when they call the speeding penalty, and this might just be like when I'm like really paying attention to all these penalties going on, it's always Christopher Bell. Yeah. It's never anybody else. It's always Christopher Bell.
It does seem to be like Christopher Bell a lot. So, but I mean, then we get, I don't know. That is what it is. So there's your Joe Gibbs dominance out the door. Luckily, they still had Denny Hamlin running up in the top 5.
But then, I mean, that's kind of been Denny Hamlin's story this season overall.
Mr. Consistent, up towards the front. So you can't even be mad. I mean, it is what it is. The guy's gonna win races. He's a good driver. So Joe Gibbs is like, at least I got a horse in this race because the other two have shot themselves in the foot, and Ty Gibbs is at the next race already.
Right.
So that really sums up all of the crazy events prior to what we're going to get into. But let's just kind of talk before we get into the shenanigans. Let's talk about Austin Dillon.
Oh, man.
Great strategy. Got him up towards the front. Honestly feel like he was just driving that car like way beyond what it should have been doing. And I think the best thing I can say is I said this to myself during the race. I said, boy, he is out driving his own car.
Dude, I said the exact same thing watching this race. Like, I was really impressed because I know Dillon can win races and everything like that, but I've never seen him drive a car so well and get so high up in the field.
Yeah, I mean, he knew that this was his only chance to win, evidenced by the end, which we'll talk about, but he really was. I mean, you could tell he was loose. He was fighting that car. It was slipping and sliding. It didn't look good in traffic. Once he got in dirty air side draft, it didn't look like he could hold his line. But he got past all the lap cars, got past Denny, and honestly was on his way to win that race. Like, he ran away with it. He would have won that race clean, and had NASCAR's most popular driver, Ricky Spinhouse Jr., what are you doing? Him and Ryan Preece on lap 399. 2 to go. Recky spin out, and Ryan Preece wreck in front of Austin Dillon to bring out the yellow. We're going into overtime. Okay, so now this is where that crucial one set of option tires left came in. Everybody that had them put them on. I think Kyle Busch was one of the only people because I think he used his second set to get back on a lead lap.
He went back to primes.
So, I mean, it is what it is. He wasn't going to win.
No.
So he was just kind of out there to just salvage whatever he could.
Pretty much. I mean, he finished in 12th anyways, so...
That's not bad.
No,
I mean,
it's where he started anyways.
Just outside of the top 10, I mean, that's probably one of his better finishes of the year, unfortunately.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
I can't even be that mad because he started in 12th, so...
No, you can't be mad because he didn't lose anything, he didn't gain anything, he hanging out.
Hanging out.
So, what we have going into this overtime, boy, we got a great final pit stop from Austin Dillon. Got him out in the front, which is very crucial, as we will learn. Denny Hamlin was crazy for me. Going back to that JGR, a little slow of a pit stop. He had that first pit stall. Doesn't matter. Lost to Logano. So now he's starting inside behind Dillon on row 2, outside of Logano. That's big. So restart hits. We go into the shootout in overtime. Logano just got off to a much better start. They said it live during the broadcast. They've never seen a restart work when they hang back in the box in the restart zone. Austin Dillon did that. I agree with what they said, that it's just inexperience. I don't think he's used to starting. He's obviously not used to restarting up in the front row. I don't think he's restarted out of the 6th row if he's lucky, honestly. So Logano jumped him, gapped him, and he was running away with it. Until turn 3 on the last lap. We hit turn 3 on the last lap, and Dillon full sends it into the back of Joey Logano. Now, that one is as intentional, I think, as you can get. It doesn't look like he slowed down. He used Logano to slow down. That, I think, is crystal clear. I wouldn't call it necessarily a bump and run, which Logano has done multiple times. I mean, look at Martinsville. I feel like everybody, especially Logano and Denny, have bump and run at Martinsville and Bristol. It's the only way to really pass on those tracks. But this was not a bump and run. This was a hit and run. And then he comes launching out of turn 4. And this one's a little bit controversial. I'm kind of split on it. I don't know if he right hooked Hamlin as much as maybe Hamlin just came up the track. The spotter audio we got from Dylan of his spotter yelling "wreck him," kind of a little egregious. Not sure if he was talking about Logano or Hamlin. I don't know when the timing syncs up on that. But I think the argument could be made that Hamlin rather, floated up the track in a natural movement. Did Dylan turn down on him? I don't necessarily know if he turned down on him, but he definitely got into him, obviously. But they have a case for it just being a racing incident, opposed to Logano, which I feel like there's no way that you could win anything about it. It was intentional.
Mm-hmm. So the way I looked at this was when it first happened, I said, "Oh man, Dylan making moves," and then when they showed starting the replays, without Dylan's spotter's audio, and his name just escaped my mind, but to me it looked like Dylan was trying to like get leverage and trying to do a bump and run.
Yeah.
But he didn't run.
He was too many car lengths away.
Yeah,
I think he was like 2 or 3 car lengths away.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to make it, so he just had to send it.
Yeah. He had the idea for the bump, which is cool, but like the running away was just like, all right, man, you got to like quickly get away from the car if you're going to pull that move.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of like, all right, cool. That was whatever, fine.
Yeah.
Hamlin though, I think you're spot on with him just floating up the track to try to get in front of Dylan and win the race.
Right.
The problem is, I think Hamlin kind of like slowed down for a split second and did it to himself, where he contacted with Dylan and got himself into the wall.
Yeah.
I think it's all Hamlin's fault for that move on his own. I don't think Dylan's really at fault for that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could have been Hamlin's spotter, who was just like wrecking. So maybe he slowed down. I'm not exactly sure when they threw the caution, but the caution light could have. No, I wasn't, because they called it after and he wrecked because he finished second.
Right.
But still, you're right. He might have slowed down. It might have been a spotter thing where it's like they're wrecking and Hamlin backs off because he doesn't know.
Right.
But who knows?
Right. The only reason why I say I think it's all Hamlin and Dylan's not really at fault is because there was a slow-mo play that they played like
From a top-down view.
Yeah. And it looks like Hamlin slows down for just like a split second.
Right.
And it's like, all right, I guess I understand, but it's kind of one of those things where it's maybe they're both at fault. I don't really know.
Yeah.
But based on what I'm seeing, I don't really think Dylan's at fault for that. I think that's all Hamlin.
I could see Dylan was kind of pointing the car towards the finish line, but again, you want to point your car at the finish line. Mm-hmm. You want to go the shortest distance to the line, so you're just going to point at it. And I think he gave Hamlin enough room. Hamlin, again, I think floated up the track. But you can kind of see all the cars behind Hamlin followed that line, so it might have just been a natural racing, but who knows.
But now considering when you add the spotter audio in like they did on the broadcast, I gotta say, I think maybe that wreck to Logano was intentional. So I'm kind of like...
The wreck to Logano, I think... The wreck, there is not a thing. I know that wreck is 100% intentional.
Yeah.
100%. You can't deny... Austin Dillon was like, I wrecked him. Literally.
But without the other, though, like I said, it kind of looks like a failed bump and run attempt.
Right. Well, the audio that they really are focusing on is the one where they're coming off turn 4 and he gets into Hamlin.
Yeah.
The spotter literally calls out "wreck him."
Right.
You hear it; it's clear as day. So, who knows? Dylan was on the Harvick podcast and was like, "No, I didn't intentionally hook him. No, my spotter, he became a fan, or a big fan." So, of course, he's going to defend his guys, and I love that. But I don't think we're ever going to really know. I think NASCAR was really put on the spot. I mean, obviously Tyler Reddick thought it was intentional on the 11 because as soon as he crossed the line, the 45 pulled up right behind him and rode his bumper the whole way into turn 1.
Yeah.
Like, tried to wreck him, which Dylan saved. Good for him. So, did what Dylan was successful against Logano. Reddick was not successful against Dylan. Who knows?
Who knows?
But So he goes on, and Dylan won the race. Good for him. He had to send it. 32nd in points, clinched the playoff berth. But then the fun happens. Then we get into the post-race interview. So before Logano even gets out of the car, he pulls down pit lane and just absolutely burns his tires and loses control. I just found out today that he almost hits Austin Dillon's family and crew, so that's not good.
No.
They took care of him, which we'll get into the aftermath of that. But Denny Hamlin, his car was absolutely destroyed, so he couldn't even do something stupid if he wanted to. But that's what Logano, and he was hot. It makes sense. I understand Logano was absolutely fuming.
Logano's always been a hothead anyways.
Yeah, he's calmed down in the past couple of years, which is nice. I think becoming a father helped. I think that's just my opinion. It seems like he calmed down a little bit after that happened, and that's good. I'm happy for him. Except that he almost annihilated Austin Dillon's family, so that's not great.
Right.
So in Logano's interview, I think he had. I literally was just like, this is an amazing post-race interview. Literally calls out Dillon. Chicken S horse move, literally he's just like, that is the most chicken S move I've ever seen. And is just sitting there while Dillon just got done. He thanked God and he praised his new baby. And Logano's just like, it's so Hippocratic. Oh my God, I can't believe he has the nerve to call out God and praise his new baby. And so, I don't know. I don't agree with that. I think that's a little overboard. But I get it. Logano was hot. He had the race win. He had the win clean because he won the restart. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on the interview?
Kind of in a similar sense to you, where I'm just like, it's very hypocritical. Like, he's got one statement, cool, then that whole response to Dillon is kind of just like, well, that kind of just negates what you just did and said, but alright, whatever, awesome. I don't know, I feel like it's a kind of sort of a typical Joey Logano interview where it's like, I'm really just reacting to the race, and this is just like my thought process, here you go.
Yeah.
I feel like they should really ask Joey Logano these questions maybe a half hour after the race, but I get it.
That's no fun.
I know, I get why they do it though, but it's just if you want a clean answer out of Logano, give him 15-ish minutes.
Yeah.
If he doesn't win. If he wins, go ahead and ask him right away. He'll tell you how it really feels.
Or you just wait, like they did for Denny Hamlin. Because his interview, I feel, was very relaxed for a Denny Hamlin interview, surprisingly. But I did catch him contradicting himself, honestly. So I caught little things where he was condemning what Dillon did. But then he also kind of defended it. He was like, I understand why he did it. This goes into the whole point system, which we'll touch on briefly, because that's a really big part of why this happened. But yeah, he just... The funny thing for me is that Hamlin concluded this interview by saying, I've never won a race with an intentional wreck. I'm going to leave that there. Because we know Denny Hamlin will do whatever it takes to win. And again, it goes back to the whole, you win, you're in. So, little hypocritical of him to come out and say that. But, hey, you do you, man.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Go ahead.
I'll tell you, I feel like the Denny Hamlin interview was just okay, bro. One of those was just all right, sure, man.
Yeah.
I mean, he kind of just accepts the fact that this race wasn't well for him, especially that last lap, because absolutely obliterated in the fourth dimension.
Got second out of it though, at least.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like I don't know. He just seemed like he didn't know how to respond, Yeah, I guess action and reaction is both correct.
Yeah.
For me to say.
Yeah.
Because he just didn't know what to say. It was just
he was. I don't know. Maybe it could
because you don't know what to make out of all this because
he also just got into a really big wreck, so he might have been a little knocked away. Not knocked out, but not there all the way because he's just recovering.
But as you've kind of been alluding to, Brian, is this that there was so much at play here for Dillon, that so much happened in such a short amount of time.
Not just Dillon, for the entirety of RCR. I mean, this win, a playoff berth, would have really changed that company.
Right. Well, I'm just thinking like in terms of like Dillon versus Hamlin.
Oh, yeah.
Right now,
Yeah.
in that instance, because like there was just a lot that needed to happen for Dillon to get in and get a playoff berth. Hamlin's already in.
Yeah.
He's won 3 races.
Same with Logano.
So it was just like you said, gotta do what you gotta do.
Yep.
And it's just, I mean, honestly, it took me a little bit to process what happened.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, thank God I wasn't doing the post race interviews. I'm like, I don't know.
Or you would have been like, "What happened, man?"
Right. Like I honestly still don't really know what happened all the way, but like as we walk through it, I'm like, well, maybe this is what happened. Maybe this is what not happened. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of sort of what Denny was going through in the interview. It was like, well, this happened.
It happened. And
I think.
he admitted he was saving his reactions for his podcast, which is smart.
Right.
It's good. But let's get into Denny Hamlin's employees.
And by the way, I hope that analysis of Denny Hamlin's interview on my end makes sense.
It made as much sense as Denny Hamlin's interview.
Yeah, pretty much. That's kind of what I was getting at.
Let's get into his employees, because they interviewed Tyler Reddick, and this was pretty interesting because Reddick kind of defended Logano, like the wreck on Logano. He's like, I understand why he did it, which, that's good. At least somebody got it. But then he immediately flips and defends Denny Hamlin, the wreck against Denny Hamlin. Obviously, that's his boss, so he's going to defend him. But then he just contradicts himself by being like, yeah, but I've done it. So it's like, okay, so you're not really the person to go to on this. You're not the authority figure because you've done it, and you've been penalized for it. So I don't get... I mean, I get trying to defend your boss. It's going to look good on your pay raise. That's about it. You might get a better car next week. But then we move on to Bubba Wallace's interview. He came off as very sarcastic about dumping and hooking a car, which we've seen him do to Larson, and obviously that was a big thing. And after all said and done, of course, Bubba jumps in at the end on the whole chicken-esque comments. I thought that was just so forced at the end. I'm like, I think his interview was really good up until that point. I think he gave... Bubba Wallace has always been a sarcastic person on the interview, so I get it. I'm not always the biggest fan of how sarcastic he comes off, but I thought the interview all in all was pretty good. It's just that last comment at the end trying to fit in with all the boys, essentially. I did not like it. It's just very forced.
Yeah, kind of like you said, I don't always appreciate the sarcasm.
Yeah.
But to me, that was just like, I don't know how to feel about that.
Yeah.
To me, it kind of feels like, makes me feel like Bubba thinks he's better than a lot of other people, a lot of other drivers, honestly.
To be fair, I think Bubba is a very consistent racer. I mean, he's obviously a multiple race winner in the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series, so he's not a slouch. He's not in the back every race. But I think he needs to have more consistent results than he's had to kind of earn that Denny Hamlin-esque sarcasm pass, if you will.
Now, if Denny Hamlin said that, I'd be like, all right, cool. That's actually kind of pretty funny.
Right.
Well, it's just the fact that's coming out of Wallace's mouth, and I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know.
That's just him, though.
Yeah.
Like I've said, I've seen him come up through the series, and he was always a very sarcastic person. Like, he'd get out of the car and be like, he finished last, he'd be like, I don't know, I think we had a pretty good day. So,
okay.
All right, whatever you do.
And like we said earlier, like, you've been watching NASCAR your entire life. I'm only a year religiously, so you know more, obviously, in that end than I would, of course.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know all about consistent finishers with Kevin Harvick. I got like, a lot of good races out of that guy. So, and then not so much that there's the end. But let's just briefly touch on my favorite interview of the race, Ross Chastain. I love his comment of he was just happy to be out of the drama. Loved it. He had a great race. He went from 7th to 4th in overtime. That's awesome for Trackhouse. I love it. Suarez, again, like I said, Chastain hopefully gets that momentum going. Here we go. I have a feeling, look out next week. Maybe we'll talk about ones to watch for. He might be on that list. I love that he said he was happy for the 3-color and RCR because ECR, who is the engine supplier for both Trackhouse and RCR, obviously. So they're keeping that Chevy and alliance together, which is nice. And I think it was just amazing how Chastain was just like, yeah, I'm just excited to not be in the drama, especially with Denny Hamlin. So that's my favorite. That's interview of the night. Any comments on Chastain? No?
Not really.
Yeah.
I didn't really actually pay attention to much of Chastain's interview, unfortunately.
Well, you missed the best one.
I usually how it goes sometimes.
Yep. All right, well, I think so after all of that is said and done, let's sum it up. JGR dominance from stage 1, not so much stage 2, and obviously not in stage 3. A lot of pit stop errors, it seemed, this week, as is most weeks, surprisingly. I feel like there's been a lot of errors, especially the past couple weeks, especially before the Olympic break. We saw a lot, I feel. And Toyota's engines' durability are very questionable at this point, and going forward, I would be concerned. And I think the biggest winner of that scenario is going to be Ford. Not very, impressive this year, Ford. If Toyota's durability continues to go down, Chevy obviously is going to remain 1. I think Ford has a chance to move into number 2 as the engine supplier in NASCAR. I think that's really good for all the Ford teams, especially Penske, and the 1 car will have a Stuart Haas next year. So definitely will be an interesting look, and I feel like Legacy Motor Club, formerly known as Richard Petty, might be regretting that move to Toyota they made this year, because they were on Chevy, and Chevy's been very dominant. So we'll see.
I feel like, at least again in my experience or limited experience watching NASCAR, I always feel like Chevy and Ford have always run pretty nicely.
Oh yeah, there was a time, especially with Casey Kane and Jeremy Mayfield, when you had Dodge was pretty good. Obviously, when you go back to Joe Gibbs with like Tony Stewart, Bobby Labonte, Pontiacs were dominant. But yeah, Chevy and Ford have always been very consistent. But I feel like Chevy has been the most consistent since NASCAR began.
Yeah. When you think about it, Chevy runs deep, even still to today, so it just makes perfect sense.
Oh yeah, and I mean, it helps when you look at a majority of the race winners are Hendrick, and everybody basically gets their engines from Hendricks. So it
makes perfect sense.
Makes perfect sense that those engines are going to win. So let's get right into who was your driver of the day.
I got 2, most because I couldn't pick.
Kyle Busch.
No.
Okay.
Carson Hocevar starts 19th, finishes 8th.
Yes.
I think that's really cool, honestly, for him.
Love it.
And then the other one I had was Ross Chastain.
Yes.
Though I didn't see his interview, starting 22nd, moving up to number 5 and finishing there. I'd probably say Chastain had the better day compared to Hocevar, just because I think he made a lot of really cool moves and everything like that, especially with switching the tires at really appropriate times. Unfortunately, he didn't win the race, obviously, but I still think it was a pretty nice run at it, and I'd like to see what he did in the field.
Can't be mad at that. All right, so my driver of the day, going to go to Suarez. I got to give it to Daniel Suarez. Rough start in stage 1, outside the top 15. Came out swinging with those option tires. I don't know how much of that goes towards crew chief. I feel like putting it on there was the crew chief's call. But boy, did he drive the heck out of those tires, and he saved them. He made that strategy work. Won stage 2, top 10 race result.
Yeah.
You can't beat that. Really good day for both Trackhouse, like you said, with Chastain finishing 5th, Suarez finishing 10th, and Suarez really important getting that stage win, those stage points in stage 2.
And again, the only reason why I was going to say Suarez, but the only reason I can't give it to him is because of the stage 1 issues. That's the only reason why I'm like, it just can't be Suarez.
Yep, I got you. I think in terms of just the longevity and the guts to really put those tires on first along with McDowell, that was just a great call. I loved it. It obviously paid off. And I think the big thing for me is why I gave it to him is because he got under the lead and he took care of his tires. Because if he doesn't take care of his tires, we saw what happened with Kyle Busch when he fought and burned those tires up. He would have just fell back and sunk. So, he came back after stage 3 began, and he sank down because everybody was on those option tires. He was on the prime, but he came back, got 10th. I love it for him.
And again, if the tires didn't work at all for what they were going to do on the track, he had nothing really to lose.
He had a whole other stage. I mean, you had a pit stop cycle and a whole other stage.
Yeah.
So he would have been fine. The strategy paid off, and honestly, him doing that really helped out other drivers and helped out Goodyear, because this was really a race test. It's so Dale Jr. said this on his podcast, that you don't really get the test results you need from when they do tire tests. So seeing it in a race, you really get those results, and you see what those tires can do. So I'm definitely interested in seeing where they go with these tires in the future. But we'll talk about that after we talk about the disappointment of the day. So who was your disappointment of the day?
I knew you were going to ask me that question. Josh Berry.
Yeah?
Start third, finish 14th. I don't know. I had him in my fantasy lineup. Was kind of really pulling for him, honestly, because I thought he was going to be really good at Richmond.
Short track guy.
He's a short track guy.
Short track guy.
Really disappointed me.
Yep.
As I alluded to earlier, Kyle Busch, maybe just because of what he was able to do with the option tire. But, I mean, starts 12th, finishes 12th. I can't really complain about that.
At least he's consistent.
That is true. That's kind of been somewhat the name of the game this season.
Yep.
Not really.
So my disappointment of the day is honestly disappointment of the year. Martin Truex Jr. Finished 37th, dead last. So yeah, that's cool. Only car to not finish, by the way. Started second, so
yeah.
You know, I mean, he got 9 points out of the day, so that's cool.
Right. I mean, it was a disappointment for sure, but I mean, I also feel like, as we said, Toyota, 5th engine blown since June. I mean,
what are you doing?
I mean, it's kind of, I hate to say it, but it's kind of expected at this point, kind of.
It is. I mean, if I'm Joe Gibbs, drivers, and I'm seeing another engine blow this week, coming up in Michigan, I'm nervous.
Yeah, I'm having to talk with Toyota.
Yeah, I mean, you have to talk about your engine supply. You have to be like, hey, something's not right here. I mean, our durability is terrible, and I feel like they've been very durable in the past couple of years. I mean, Martin Truex has wrecked himself, but just this year, I just feel like, man, they just blow up. I feel like every week is a Toyota blowing up.
Yeah.
So, what are you gonna do? I don't know. But yeah, my disappointment's got to be Truex. I mean, the guy was second. He had any of the JGR guys that's not Denny Hamlin really could be the disappointment, because I feel like at least with Christopher Bell speeding, his own fault, and Truex not his fault. So
yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. It's like, it's not really Truex's fault. It's really just like the car blowing up.
I think the disappointment for me, the disappointment of the day goes more towards Toyota instead of Truex. But you got to give it to Truex. I mean, he didn't do himself any good. He had that issue in the pits in stage 2. So, you know, it's just, I feel bad. It's his last season. The guy's, something's got to go right. But it just seems like it won't. So that kind of wraps up the day. I just want to talk briefly about the tires. I like having 2 sets. I don't know if giving more sets is the answer, but I feel like they need to mandate it so you can't just stockpile them all towards the end of the race. I'd like to see you have to use it in stage 1 or 2, maybe. Just because if you have 2 towards the end of the race and there's 2 cautions, then you're putting, 2 options, while like guys in the back like Kyle Busch or even Suarez used up a set. So now you're down a set, and we saw what happened. He fell back, but he was able to get back up. I don't know. I just feel like mandating using 1 set or a set, if they give him more sets during a stage, whether it be 1 or 2, would be nice. You can flip it. I mean, IndyCar, you have to use both compounds, so that would be kind of reminiscent of that. But I don't know how that translates to an oval. So, I don't know. That's something to figure out.
Right.
Maybe look to IndyCar for that, I think would be the best thing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe reach out to IndyCar, see what's going on with that, and then
maybe test it Indy weekend if they do when they NASCAR races Indy, and then the Indy cars are there. I don't think they do the same week anymore because they got rid of the Indy road course, I believe.
Right.
But I don't know. That would have been an opportune time to test it.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like the same deal with these rain tires here. It's like there's got to be a way to mandate it and police it.
Well, yeah.
But what is that?
The rain tires was if everybody has to be on the rain tires.
Right.
You know, which I think is.
But I don't think that should be the case with these option tires because they're option tires.
Right, but also the rain tires shouldn't be that mandated either because you see it in Formula One. Now again, this is road course racing, not oval racing in Formula One, but some people stay on slicks and they can find a dry line and they're good, or they're slipping around and they're spinning out. But there's a risk, there's a strategy to take. Obviously with oval, they're bumper to bumper. One guy decides to go on slicks and spins out, everybody's done. But I don't know. There might be. I don't know if mandating the use of all at the same time. I don't think that's the answer. It wouldn't make good racing. I would like to see. Again, this is also something Dale Jr. said because we saw it at the Bristol race. Saving tires made the race really, really interesting, and I'd like to see this softer compound come to probably be used more, if not as the main tire, in at least short tracks.
Yeah. That's a good point. I was going to say the same thing where I felt like it was very interesting to see like the start of stage 3 when everybody switched over. Like that made the race interesting to me because I'm just like everybody's going over to it.
Right.
That seems really cool.
They were very confident. I like how confident everybody was on a restart.
But then again, as you pointed out, how interesting or not interesting would that make the race if everybody's running the option?
Right. I mean, I like the strategy was amazing. I mean, you have to think about, okay, the fall off is this many laps, and it was more, or the fallout was less than what they thought, which was nice, obviously, so then people can play with the strategy even more. Who knows? I don't think mandating everybody use it at the same time is the answer, but I think mandating using at least a set so you can't stockpile them before the end of maybe stage 2 would be the right move. Maybe. I don't know. I just don't like to see that, people like Hamlin or, any of the Joe Gibbs cars or Kyle Larson or any of the Hendrick cars, any of the main teams that are always in the top 10 can just stockpile these 2 tires to the end, while cars like Michael McDowell or Todd Gilliland or insert random driver in the back of the pack, Austin Dillon, can just, they have to burn up their option tires. So I just think maybe mandating it in one of the first 2 stages would be a good move. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, but then you still want them probably for stage 3.
Oh yeah,
gain
yeah.
momentum.
You would save a set. I'm just saying you have to use one set before stage 2 ends or something, so you don't stockpile it to the last stage.
Yeah, but if you got a long stage 3, such as like Richmond is,
prime it and soft it at the end. That's our option. That's what I would do personally. So you have more grip at the end of the race. Could double prime it, bank on a caution. There's still strategy involved. I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe I'm not seeing it because I've only been like religiously watching for about this year, as we alluded to.
Right. I mean, if there's 100-something stage 3, both sets aren't going to even get you to the end of the race anyway, with the fallout. So.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
But I mean, I don't know. That's why I'm saying maybe give them more sets, mandate the use of one, so you're not stockpiling 3, 4, 5, whatever sets they give them to the end of the race.
But then again, what it really is the fallout, because we saw, as we talked about, drivers testing different things, with Suarez staying like at about 100, 110 miles an hour, Kyle Busch at about 120. So what really is the fallout in terms of laps?
Yeah,
it's definitely less than 50. That's for sure.
It's however long you can take care of your tires. It's Bristol. That's what it is. It's that Bristol race all over again. I think that would be interesting. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe mandating is not the way to go. Maybe you just let them all just go. I don't know. That's NASCAR's call. I'm not in NASCAR. That's not my problem. So, anyway, it was a really awesome thing to see in terms of strategy. So, let's just kind of get into the aftermath of what happened real quick, because, boy, did it get hairy there. So, Austin Dillon was indeed penalized. So, they gave him the win. He's still the race winner, but he lost that guaranteed playoff berth. He also lost 25 points in the standings, and his spotter is suspended for 3 races. mainly because of the Wreck Him comments during the race. RCR came out today and said that they will appeal this. This goes back into what I was saying with the Logano versus Hamlin, intentional versus not intentional. I think they have a case against Hamlin. I don't think they have a case against Logano. So if this appeal is to be overturned, I think NASCAR is going to look more into the Logano wreck. Was it a traditional in quotes, bump and run, or was it more? And I think we'll just go from there. But I think they have a really good case with the Denny Hamlin wreck as opposed to the Logano wreck. I think they're going to have more of a uphill battle fighting that one.
Yeah, I think you changed my mind, actually, just talking about the Hamlin wreck. I think you got a good point there. The Logano one, I think it really just depends on what angle you're looking at, how you view what a bump and run should look like. Can a bump and run be different? I don't know. It's kind of a double-edged sword with Logano.
Yeah.
I feel like.
I mean, was Dylan out of control? I don't think he was out of control. I think he maintained control of his car. I think you need to look at how hard Logano hit. Was this wreck dangerous in terms of even like Denny Hamlin? I feel like Denny Hamlin's wreck was much more dangerous than this. So again, it just, I guess, depends on the severity of what they deem the wreck to be, and I guess hopefully maybe next week or maybe even by Sunday we'll have an idea of what the repercussions and decision of the appeal might be. But Logano was also fined $50,000 for the burnout I mentioned near Dylan's family and crew in the pits. That was not a good look.
No.
I showed you what he did before we started, and that was not good.
Yeah, I think your direct quote was, that was a lot closer than I thought it was.
Yeah, it definitely, upon rewatching it again, he was a lot closer to hitting like a woman and a baby, and that's not cool, dude.
Not cool, dude. Not cool at all.
So,
as much as I like Joey Logano, the driver, Joey Logano, the person, I guess, in this instance, that's a little questionable, man.
Little questionable. So that wraps up our recap, our discussion about the Cookout 400 at Richmond. All in all, it was a okay race.
Yeah.
The end was absolutely fantastic.
I would say it was kind of a race you could kind of go back and forth on. You could do stuff in the background until you get to the start of stage 2 and probably the second half of stage 3 is when this thing really got interesting.
Yeah, stage 2 and stage 3 I definitely think was the when the entertainment value started to build. But hey, I enjoyed the entire strategy. I probably paid attention more than most casual viewers did to the whole option versus prime thing, but I enjoyed it. It seemed people enjoyed it as well, so that's good. So next week we have the Firekeepers Casino 400 from Michigan International Speedway. I love Michigan. 400 miles, 200 laps. You can't beat that. So let's kind of talk about who are the ones that we're going to look for in fantasy for next race. Who are you thinking is going to be maybe the hot pick, somebody to watch, maybe somebody you're going to avoid, and maybe what's your sleeper?
Man, it's always tough. And the reason I say that is because I just don't know. I feel like sometimes with fantasy I don't know enough at this young stage of my NASCAR fandom. But you want an answer? I'll tell you what the answer is going to be. Essentially, I think what I'm after is trying to figure out who's going to work well in Michigan. If I look at last year's winner, it's Chris Buescher.
Yeah.
Do I think he can repeat? Potentially. Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know. It's kind of tough. I might go with Chase Elliott. I might go with him. I don't know. There's a lot, and I kind of sort of like to see. I always base my fantasy off what happens in qualifying.
Yeah.
I always do that. I probably shouldn't do that, but I don't know. So at this stage, what I'll tell you is I think I'm going to look at Chris Buescher, I'm going to look at Chase Elliott, and I'm probably going to look at honestly, Ross Chastain. So.
All right. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm keeping my eye on Chris Buescher. Obviously won last year. I think, personally, Fords are going to be strong this week. Ford has always been good at Michigan. Obviously, I watched Kevin Harvick win at Michigan, so I know Fords are going to be good. I also got Buescher's teammate, Brad Keselowski. I think both of them are going to have good days. And Logano. I put Logano in because I just feel like Logano is not happy. I feel like I hope he doesn't go out of his way to mess with Dillon. I hope he just sticks it to him and wins this race. That's what I'd like to see. In terms of who to avoid, Martin Truex Jr. Just avoid him. I'm sorry, but this is just, he's gonna blow an engine. That's just the way it's going, and I know you're not gonna like me for this. Kyle Busch, avoid Kyle Busch.
No, he's not even going to be in my lineup.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to have a great day, unfortunately. I think this is going to be a very Ford-powered race anyway.
He doesn't have a good track record at Michigan, honestly.
No, he does not. But as for my sleeper, I'm in the same boat as you, Ross Chastain. I'm floating between Chastain and Suarez. I just think Chastain is a better, his driving style is more suited for Michigan. Yeah. So I'm going to keep my eye on Chastain for this upcoming race. All right, so with that being said, I think we covered everything. I'm definitely looking forward to what happens next at Michigan, and kind of just seeing what happens between Hamlin, Logano, and Austin Dillon, and seeing what happens with the appeal.
Yeah.
So we will touch on that next week. Hopefully when we'll have the results of the appeal. We'll definitely have the results of Michigan, when hopefully William Byron wins, but he won't. So with that being said, this has been the first installment of Full Speed Friday. I am Brian.
I am Colin.
And we will see you next week after Michigan.